And it's like you said, I mean, there were chuck holes in the streets you could bury a car in. And prostitutes, with the Untech had left, and all the prostitutes would go broke. If you drove around at night, they would throw themselves on the hood of your car. And I thought, this is a horrible place. And they hadn't had garbage picked up in 30 years, and it was just a mess. So I'm thinking, I don't want to come here. But just the last day, I was only there for 3 days, I went to the National Museum, and when you walked through the door at that time, it was right by the Royal Palace. Immediately over the entrance to the museum, they had a map of the ancient kingdom of Jampa. And I thought, that's my wife's kingdom. And it took in all of Cambodia, southern Laos, central Vietnam, northeast Thailand, and part of Myanmar. And I looked at that, I thought, this is my wife's country. So I went back and told her that. And she said, oh yeah, didn't you know that? I said, well, how about going to Cambodia? She said, no, missionaries are poor. I don't want to be a missionary. I like it here. So we had this big fight. Missions called me up. They said, we want to know, you're either going or not. Let us know tomorrow, one way or the other. So we were fighting about it, and she went to bed angry. I was angry. We're sleeping in bed. She's looking at one wall. I'm looking at the other. I said, okay, they don't send divorced missionaries to the field. I'll call them up tomorrow and tell them I'm not going. We went to sleep. I woke up in the morning, and she's sitting in bed like a little Buddha statue with a big smile on her face, and she said, I'll go. I looked at her and I said, what happened to you? She said, God talked to me. I said, well, what did he say that I haven't said? She said, he told me he has a contract with me. I looked at her, I said, a contract? She said, yeah. Do you remember when you got sent to the Rice Institute and we were in love and you were sending love letters to me and I was answering them? I said, yeah. Well, in one of the letters you wrote, you asked me, you said, if I become a missionary, will you still marry me? And I'd forgotten completely about that letter. And she said she kept the letters and put them in the bottom of a cedar chest, a chest where she kept her good clothing. Somehow an angel had gotten that letter where she answered it and said, she wrote back and said yes, and she signed it. And it was on top of the dresser when she got up. And God said, see, you signed it. And that's what did it. Honest truth. That's why we're in Cambodia. So then missions wrote and said, okay, we accept you, but the problem is we don't have any money to deploy you. So then Sue was happy because we couldn't go. And she agreed to go. So she was off the hook. So I was president of the camp board for our district campground for the youth. And I was over at a board meeting and sat under the flagpole eating my lunch. And one of the pastors from Central Illinois walked by. And he said, Ted, I heard you were thinking about missions. I said, yeah, I was, but we're not going. He said, what happened? I said, well, they don't have any money to deploy us. He said, how much does it take? I said, well, they want me for 3 years, so by the time you pay for transportation, education, and get a house and everything, probably need $250,000 for 3 years. He said, I'll send it in the morning. I looked at him. I said, Dave, I know your church. They offered me your church. I know what you get paid. Where are you going to get $250,000? He said, well, we sold the TV station that we own. And we got $7 million for it, so I'll send you some of that. And he did. So I went back and told my wife, and she was not happy. But we came over here, and honestly, if it weren't for her royal connections, her first cousin is on the front and back of the 100 piastre, 100 real, 100 kip note that was circulated all throughout French Indochina. It was the most popular bill, printed up till 1954. And so her relatives in antiquity intermarried with the kings and princes of Cambodia. And by virtue of that, she was given Cambodian citizenship. They actually gave her an amended birth certificate showing that she was born here. So She was able to, otherwise we'd have not been able to build churches, because churches cannot own property in Cambodia. Foreigners can't own property in Cambodia. Only two entities can own property here: a Cambodian citizen or a Cambodian majority-held company. And other than that, you can't. That's why there aren't very many church buildings built. They have to be in someone's name, and they always steal them. Well, sure enough, our first national leader tried to steal all of our property. I caught him, and we cut a deal. I gave him 2 buildings, and he let us keep the rest, and we walked away from each other. He's still around. Then the second leader we brought in, he tried to steal everything about 4 years ago.
Wow.
And he's still trying to steal it. That's why Sue's running around the country thumbprinting all the land deeds. So we fought those battles, but if it weren't for Sue, this church would have never happened. It wouldn't have survived. And she's been the real key to it all. I've been the point man with the vision of taking Cambodia for Christ, but she's been the key to the success of it. That's the story. So we started out with one small, actually the first, I had no idea that I would take care of orphans. I didn't even like kids that much. And I'm thinking, God, how are we going to reach this country? Because when I got here in '98, there were 1,600 missionaries in Cambodia. They were tripping over each other. And nothing's going on. There are no church buildings. I mean, they were pathetic. And I'm complaining, God, what's wrong with this picture? Why isn't there a church thriving here? He said, that's the trouble with you missionaries. You just care about man's spirit. Don't you realize they're triune? I said, well, I know you are. He said, no, don't you know you are? I said, I don't know what you mean. He said, don't you realize every human being has a physical aspect? They have to be able to feed themselves and care for their families and put a roof over their head. What are you doing about that? I said, well, nothing. He said, yeah, you're helping them connect in the spirit, but what are you doing about the social problem? Don't you realize that 1/3 of these people just got done killing the other half of the other 2/3? And now you don't know if the guy they're riding on the motorbike with isn't the one that killed their mother, father, son? What are you doing to help them reconnect and love, accept, and forgive each other? Well, I thought you'd take care of that. And he said, son, if you'll build me a church that will minister to the whole person, I'll use you to build a church in Cambodia. I said, God, why me? And he went through my whole past, and he showed me that for 52 years, everything I've been put through, including my biggest failures, my time farming, he would use to build this ministry in Cambodia. And for 52 years, I was 52 when I set foot here, and I had no clue I was being prepared for missions. I thought I was this guy couldn't keep his mind on anything for more than 10 years. And he showed me that it was all done to bring Cambodia to Christ. So, you know, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. You can look in Operation World or in, what is it, from Edinburgh Press, the Atlas of Global Missions. And you'll see the fastest growing church in the world is the church here in Cambodia. And the largest church in Cambodia is Foursquare. And so that was, I didn't know that till I found a guy in Norway, Asia Link, Eric Jensen. You may have met him.
Yeah.
I go over there every couple years. They support us. And he showed me the book. He said, Ted, you realize you're the fastest growing church in the world? I said, ah. And I couldn't believe it when I looked through that thing. But God is sovereign. That's all I can say. Reason we're here, we started buying rice and we noticed that during harvest the price would go down and then it would go up all year long. And we're trying to feed these orphans, and we couldn't afford the rice in the summertime when there was no crop. And the Chinese rice millers would buy it all up, and then they'd raise the price all through the year. So I thought we needed a rice mill, and we needed a place where there's no town around, nobody's got a good place to sell their rice, and we can buy the rice and store it. So I got our rice storage bin donated to us, and we found this area. We had all our pastors scouring. They said, this place is perfect. It's in the middle of nowhere, nothing but rice fields all around.
Yeah.
So we bought this, and it's really, none of these houses were here. They all came about because we put the rice, this town we're entering now, they call it the Old Foreigner's Rice Mill, is the nickname for the town. And of course I'm the old foreigner. But the whole town is built up around, we're almost there, our rice farm. And we started getting the orphans because the nastiest woman in Cambodia was our first convert. And she was mean. I mean, if you wanted a Halloween witch, you would get her to play the part. And so she's nasty, but she runs a motorcycle shop, and she was stealing from her customers. She'd sell used parts for new prices, cheat on labor. All of a sudden, she's still nasty, but her character changed. So this started in January of '99. We got her saved in December of '98. And by April of '99, she'd have 400 people standing in the rain halfway down to Kampong Som in front of her motorcycle shop. And they can't believe what happened to this woman. So to test her, one night they brought, AIDS was going through Cambodia like a flu virus in '98. And the Cambodians didn't even know what caused it. And they had a couple that had just died of AIDS and left 2 children. And they were sick, so the villagers thought they had AIDS too. So they brought them over to her house 10 o'clock at night, banged on her door, put them on the doorstep, and ran away. She took them in, cleaned them up, didn't know what was wrong with them, so she brought them up to me, put them on my doorstep. Her name is Paula. I said, Paula, what are you bringing me these kids for? I don't want these kids. You're a Christian, you can't let them starve. And I didn't know what to do. So I went around all the orphan homes I could find in Phnom Penh, and I said, take these kids. They said, no, we got too many, take some of ours. I said, no, thank you, I've got enough. We made the big mistake of starting to feed them. And within a month, 2 had turned into 40. And so we rented an abandoned brothel where they had a little 3-story hotel next to it and a dance floor. The dance floor became our church sanctuary, and the little 3-story hotel became our orphan home. And that's how we got into it. And just one miraculous thing after another. We never had any money for it. I was $30,000 in debt with my credit cards and had no money. And I said, God, what am I going to do? Here's our beginning of our property. But God, you know, just sovereignly started bringing people along, like you. We've got stuff stacked all over, trying to fix stuff. It's actually a training school. We have about 30 young men that are our orphan kids that we're training here in agriculture.